This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Oh man, have you downloaded a good one today? Welcome in to this Wednesday midweek edition of the Chris Stigall Show. It's the 18th day of October. I'm glad you're here. I think you'll be glad you're here too. My colleague and friend Dennis Prager joins the show today. We actually talked with him yesterday after his show. It was a wide-ranging discussion on, of course, what we're staring at on our televisions most of the time right now and in our news apps, Israel and Hamas. How does he see it? He might surprise you at some of the things that I offer up from some colleagues of mine to him. His reaction kind of surprised me. So we'll talk with him about that. He has some things to say about school choice. As you know, that is a priority of mine and my wife's with our podcast, Making the Leap, and entertaining other options. If you have kids in public school, we're begging you to consider other options, whatever those look like. So we talk a lot about that. Dennis has a lot to say on that subject too, so we weave into that a little bit too and talk about his PragerU enterprise, which has exploded with success. John Hayward is back because he is the smartest guy I know. I will just tell you, this is a smart show. Like, this show is not for dummies. It's not for mouth breathers. It's not for knuckle draggers. You got to be strapped in and ready to go. And I know there's nobody in this audience who's a knuckle dragger or a mouth breather, but I warn any mouth breathers happening by. This is not a show for dummies. So you got Dennis, you got John, you got my friend Emerald Robinson, who is fantastic at frankspeech.com. She used to cover the White House and Capitol Hill. She knows a lot of players inside D.C. We get into some of the questions that she's been asking about this conflict. We get into the House Speaker fight. I give you some of my thoughts, too. The Democrats continue to coalesce around Bob Menendez, of all things. They're kind of calling for his resignation, but not really. This House Speaker fight, I'll talk through it a little bit. I'm not sweating that Jim Jordan probably going to be the speaker, but, you know, there are 20 moderates that are trying to make you work at it for a minute or two. So whatever, we'll get to it. But first, let me tell you about John Ruhlman, the guy that underwrites this show and the guy that most importantly saves you money on health insurance if you're shopping for it or if you've never thought about shopping for it. This is that time of year where people start to either re-up their health insurance plans with their companies. I don't know what is being taken out of your check every month. Have you ever shared that number with John Ruhlman? Serious question. Like, if you get insurance for your family through your work, like I do, have you called John and said, hey, here's what I pay a month out of my check. Do you have a better plan for my family that I wouldn't have to pay this much and that I can pay privately myself? John knows 80 different private health insurers, so he's never going to leave you without at least equal or always better coverage if he can get there. Equal or better coverage. It's never going to be like substandard coverage. That's never going to happen. But most importantly, cheaper. So how about equal to or better coverage and cheaper from a private health insurer than what you're paying through work? Or if you're a small business owner and you buy your health insurance for your employees, could you save? I bet you could. If you buy it out of pocket as an individual or for your family, could you save? Or a senior buying a supplemental health plan, could you save? I bet you could. It just takes a couple of minutes, and I hate bureaucrats. I can't stand bureaucratic, wait on hold. I got to fill out the form and transfer this, and how do I know? And my doctor. In fact, they'll even get involved for you if there's some kind of dispute currently, even right now. If you're locked in some insurance kerfuffle right now, and you've never talked to John in your life, John and his care team will actually inject themselves into the discussion for you. Let them be your advocates in health insurance. We need advocates when doing battle with bill paying and that sort of thing through hospitals and clinics. 877-410-4321. That's John's number. 877-410-4321. usmedicalplan.com. My video conversation with John is live at chrisstigall.com if you want to get a sense of who he is and hear some of the questions that I ask him. That's usmedicalplan.com or 877-410-4321. You have a United States Senate. You'd be forgiven if you didn't know that. There is another body called the United States Senate, and they're supposed to be meeting. In fact, that's supposed to be the more deliberative body. They do things like appoint judges, and they do things like vote for matters of war and conflict and things like that. So yesterday, Chuck Schumer. Let's go to the audio from yesterday. Chuck Schumer talking about Bob Menendez. He's asked about Bobby Red Light Menendez, Mr. Gold Bars and Cash under indictment. They want to know, now that we're discussing matters of combat and perhaps U.S. engagement. And, of course, you know, he's one of the, I think he is the ranking Democrat on the Senate Intelligence or Senate Foreign Relations. That's what it is. He's the ranking Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and he's not going anywhere. So poor Chucky Schumer, he has to deal with this and figure out what to say about old Bobby Red Light Menendez. So he's, let the tap dancing begin.
What would it take to move you toward a position of saying, you know what, Senator Menendez, please step away?
Look, as I've said before, the Senate should have certain standards. And if you read the indictment, Senator Menendez has gone way, way below those standards.
So what is your hesitation of asking him to step down?
He has been way, way below those standards, and we'll see what happens after that.
I know, Senator. We all hear you saying that. We all hear what you're saying, but we're just curious about why. If by your own admission he's gone way, way below the standards, why wouldn't you just say, you know what, Bob? I think of you as a colleague and a friend, but now is the time you got to go. I'm just curious about what your hesitation is.
I've had some serious discussions with him,
which are ongoing.
As I said, I've had some serious discussions with him. Yes.
Okay. You clearly don't want to discuss it.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is one thing that I think many of you in this audience are extraordinarily frustrated with Republicans about. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but Chuck Schumer has just demonstrated something the Republicans can't do. Because most Republicans are still intellectually honest. Most of them. I know you are, and I know I am. What Chuck Schumer has just done is hung tough with Bobby Red Light Menendez, Mr. Gold Bars and Cash. He will not go as far as to say publicly, as the Senate Majority Leader, this man under federal indictment looks crooked as the day is long. This man should step down from his post. I'm calling on him to resign. The Senate Majority Leader can't say that. Some of his colleagues had, but he can't, and he won't. All he'll say is he's well below the standard, whatever the standard is. Is John Fetterman the standard? Mr. Hoodie? He's well below the standard, sure. So even the CBS morning anchors are getting frustrated. They're like, okay, if he's well below the standard, shouldn't you tell him to leave? I've had serious talks with him. I understand that, but are you calling on him to leave the Senate? We've had serious talks. I think that there are many of you in the audience who would say to this, you see what Democrats do? They never go as far as slitting the throats of their own. They don't ever quite step off that cliff. They go right up to it sometimes and say, we've had serious talks, or the information provided looks troubling. We'll have to, more review is necessary, but certainly if these things happen to be true. They never throw their own over entirely. And so I think there are a lot of you, I don't mean to speak for everyone here, and maybe I've got this wrong, but from the notes that I get from so many of you and the number of people that say this to me, that they're mad Republicans don't hang tough and hold together when times get tough. I think Chuck Schumer has just put on a clinic, Exhibit A, as to what you're talking about. Here is a man who has clearly been having, allegedly, well before this even happened, before he married his second wife, it's been alleged he's having underage sex in the islands. He's been helping enrich his buddies through Medicare fraud, his eye doctor buddy who went to prison. Remember, he skated on indictments before because of a hung jury. Now his home's been raided. They say he's got clothes and pockets full of cash and gold bars, which he says, hey, I'm Cuban. That's what Cubans do, you know. We don't trust banks. They've got a car given to them by the Egyptian government. The guy's filthy corrupt. And there's the Senate Majority Leader of his party on national television being asked, do you think he should step down? He can't bring himself to say it, and he won't. because they don't have to. Being a Democrat means never having to say you're sorry. And in fact, they know they don't have to. Because you heard those anchors. You heard ultimately what happened in that exchange. They pressed him a couple of times, and then they said, well, okay, I guess if you don't want. Now, if that were a Republican, if that were Mitch McConnell, assuming he could get through his paralyzing, crippling mini strokes that he has every time he speaks publicly these days, if that were Mitch McConnell, the entire interview would have been spent with that crew badgering Mitch until he acquiesced and said that his fellow Republican should resign. And then there would be stories written. If Mitch McConnell even said, I don't know, we need to be cautious here. I've had stern conversations. If he hesitated or equivocated in any way, they would write stories. This is the problem with the Republican Party. Mitch McConnell can't lead clearly. The Republican Party needs a clear, true north. They need a voice. Corruption is rampant in the Republican Party. And where's the leadership? Where will they stand up? Well, look at how they treat the fiction event of January 6th. They've branded anybody who won't come out and say Donald Trump should have been impeached a second time. He should never be the nominee again. He should be in prison. Any Republican who stops short of saying that, they're badgered and harangued by media. And sometimes called co-conspirators of something that's not even real. This Menendez thing is extremely real, and his party leader won't say he should resign. It's amazing. So the next question, should Senator Menendez, under federal indictment, should he be allowed to attend these highly classified briefings as we talk about deploying our military assets to potential hostile combat zones? Should Senator Menendez be a part of these discussions? Here was Chuck Schumer on that.
Should Senator Menendez be allowed to attend the classified briefing on Israel tomorrow, and you still stand by your position that he should not resign? You're not calling him for.
He's not going to attend the briefing tomorrow. Yes. I don't get involved in I've had private conversations. I don't get involved in what happened in them on this kind of thing. He's not attending.
How about the correlation?
Next. Go ahead.
And it's that easy. It's that easy. We had a private conversation. I'm not getting into it. You're owed nothing. Shut up, little boy. Scoot along. And the Democrats get away with that. It's just, it's something to behold. So, look, the hypocrisy of the press is one thing, but I think on display here, what you're seeing is even at their most corrupt, even at their most clearly, obviously corrupt, they still will never walk the plank the way the Republicans do. Now, as for the House fight, listen, I am not... I've been very clear about this. I am not wound up about it, not even a little bit. Not losing sleep over it. It doesn't upset me. I don't much care that we don't have a Speaker of the House right now. We talked about this yesterday. We went to Capitol Hill, talked with our correspondent there from the Washington Times. We talked through what Jim Jordan and his vote would mean and whether he'd get there or not. We said he probably wouldn't, and in fact, he did not. The first vote concerning Representative Jim Jordan's bid to become the next Speaker of the House fell short Tuesday. In the words of one ally of Jordan's, it was much worse than we expected. 20 Republicans voted against Jim Jordan's candidacy, far more than the handful he could afford to lose, which, of course, was only 4. You can't lose 5. You need every Republican save 4. If you lose 5 Republicans, you can't win. Because, again, you're not counting the Democrats. So you need that 217. They're making a big deal of Brian Kilmeade over there at Fox. I guess Kilmeade does his own radio show after the television show. I guess yesterday he was talking about this guy, Don Bacon. I don't know who Don Bacon is. He's a Nebraska Republican who's been pretty vocal that he won't support Jim Jordan. Here's what Brian Kilmeade had some choice words that he thought were off mic, but apparently the mic was hot. Take a listen.
Jeffries. Babin. Jordan. Bacon. McCarthy.
Dumbass.
So as they're watching the floor vote take place for Jim Jordan, Don Bacon from Nebraska says, "I vote McCarthy." And then you hear Kilmeade cut in. He's got his live mic open. Dumbass. Well, he is. Look, I don't know that I agree with Kilmeade on everything, but as for who voted for others besides Jordan, if you care, I don't. Again, this doesn't really wind me up, folks. These people are all, they answer to their constituents. They aren't supposed to fall in lockstep in uniformity. But this is what frustrates a lot of you. This is what I mean. The reason I brought up Schumer is I know why a lot of you are so frustrated. You feel like, why are the Republicans not able to coalesce like this? Why don't they get together behind closed doors and fight and then come out unified like Chuck Schumer does for Bob Menendez? You know, Chuck Schumer says, we've had stern conversations, but I'm not going to disclose them here. Republicans can't do that. Look, I don't know. You can assign them motives if you want. You can say they're money grubbing. They're trying to fundraise. You can say they're trying to showboat for attention. I'm sure some of that's true. But I also think some of these Republicans have deeply held convictions. They may not be convictions you share or that we agree with, but the frustration of being in the Republican Party has always been we are not a monolith. We don't vote in straitjackets. It's always been a frustration. The moderates have long had control of the Republican Party. The thing is, for the first time in a long time, the Make America Great conservative has a voice. Donald Trump and Donald Trump-like supporters have been infused heavily into the Republican Party, and now as they jockey for leadership in the new way forward, the old guard is fighting with the new guard, and they don't want to let go. And virtually every one of these people, as I see, correct me if I'm wrong, every single one of these people yesterday who voted against Jim Jordan are a moderate. They're a soft Republican. Maybe not fair to say of somebody like Nick LaLotta. I don't know who he is. He voted for Lee Zeldin. They're from New York together. All the people that voted for McCarthy, I would presume, are protest votes. I would assume these are Republican moderates who are just trying to stick a middle finger in the air at the Freedom Caucus, Matt Gaetz, and conservatives and say, no, we stick with McCarthy. F you. I take all of these McCarthy votes yesterday as that. Then I think there are a handful of people that just don't like Jim Jordan, or they don't like the Freedom Caucus, or they don't like MAGA, or whatever. Or there's a third option. They sincerely, genuinely believe if we're going to pick a new speaker, I think it ought to be Lee Zeldin or Steve Scalise or, I'm looking at who some of these people, Thomas Massey voted one from Indiana. Somebody wanted a guy called Tom Emmer. These are people I've never even heard of, or I don't pay close attention to. Maybe you do. Somebody voted for a guy called Tom Cole out of Oklahoma. So it's the House of Representatives. There's 435 individuals representing 435 individual districts. They only have to answer to their district. They don't have to answer to network news. They don't have to answer to all of us nationwide. And I know the media froths and says, we don't have a speaker. The Republican House is in chaos. This doesn't bother me. As I said yesterday, this is a healthy debate. Let the kids sort it out. I think it's time. I think there are more conservatives. I think there are more Make America Great conservatives than there are not. By the way, did you see yesterday what Joe Biden did? We see what he's doing here, don't you? The Husk, interestingly, this was breaking news yesterday. The White House will be asking Congress for $100 billion for Ukraine, Israel, and border security. Bloomberg reporting that yesterday. You see what they've done here? So here are the Republicans having a legitimate fight about who should lead them going forward, and it's largely over this issue of spending. And now, cleverly, because the Democrats are always one step ahead, they're much better at this than the Republicans are, while the Republicans fight, and yes, they should have had this sorted out before now, I'll stipulate. But they don't. Okay, here we are. So while the Republicans fight for direction and vision, the White House says, Israel's at war. They could really use our help. We have a wide open border. There's really a lot we should be doing about that. Ukraine, We need $100 billion right now, but we need Congress to authorize it. Could you fellas and ladies help us out, please, here at the White House? So now all of a sudden the White House is leaning on Congress. They need the House's help. So you get what it is, right? So you're going to be fed a steady diet now of the White House urgently needs to help Israel, and the House of Representatives and the Republicans are in chaos and can't get their excrement together. So that's the game that's being played. I reject the idea. Number one, the border has been wide open. Closing the border should be a priority. It should have been a priority for Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy said that was his priority. That was one of the things that did not happen under Kevin McCarthy. So how do you explain that? How do you explain it? I can't. Why does he deserve? I mean, he said the 80,000 IRS agents were going to be defunded. That didn't happen. We're not back to pre-COVID level spending. That didn't happen. For all the ballyhooing about the Republican Party in disarray, did Kevin McCarthy deliver on the things that so many of us America First conservatives wanted? He didn't. Okay, so they're having a fight about who next. And the Democrats are poking him going, hey, we need money for the border, as if they care about the border. Hey, we need money for Ukraine and Israel. Oh, I'm sure you do. And Iran and all the other people you like funneling our money to. I don't mind that we hold on that. It doesn't bother me a bit that the United States is not cutting checks to everybody right and left who's in combat. Sorry, excuse me, but I think we can all take a breath on our spending. Thank you very much. The border, a little different. But this is what they're setting up now. The narrative that the House Republicans are in chaos while very serious things are happening. All, as we've talked about, Joe Biden's doing. Barack Obama's doing. The Biden administration's doing. This is their doing. So is the timing perfect? No. Is timing ever perfect for Republicans to have a big public fight? No. But it is what it is. This is where we are. No reason to panic here. They'll figure it out, just like they figured it out 15 votes later on McCarthy. They'll figure it out. I don't know where it ends. I don't know how it ends, but I'm not worried about it. Hey there, it's Chris, back on the phone with my dentist and friend Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, Pennsylvania, just off the Blue Route with new technology. You have not just new associates, but they brought new technology into the business to make it a little easier for patients.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time in dentistry. We have now introduced a three-dimensional x-ray called a CBCT scan in our office, which allows us to diagnose and things earlier for patients. My daughter is placing a lot of implants in the past have referred out. It's now being done in-house. And we also, we've been using dental or computer scanners for taking impressions for crowns for about the last 2 to 3 years. We now have introduced the next step, which is a milling machine, and we can now make crowns in the office. Things can be completed in the same day as opposed to having a temporary crown put on and 3 weeks later coming back and having a permanent crown put on. It's really a game changer, and it's a time saver for our patients to not have to make multiple visits to the office.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. It is a thrill to be with the one and only Dennis Prager. At a time such as this, I can think of nobody smarter to lean on than my colleague and friend with the Salem Media Company that I call home, and I know he has for many, many years. Dennis, welcome to the show. Welcome back.
Always good to be with you.
You were kind enough to come visit in Philadelphia for a second time, I think in like a year we were together, and the audience just loves you. We learn a lot every time that you speak, but I have to say I know a lot of shows have leaned on you because of your theological background at a time such as this. Give me your 30,000-foot view, your PragerU, if you will, of what we're seeing unfolding right now in Israel.
I made a video for PragerU about 10 years ago, and it's gotten at least 10 million views. I'm happy, really happy to say. And I would hope that all of your listeners would actually view it. It's only 5 minutes, as all our videos are. And it's about explaining the Middle East. I was a graduate student at Columbia University at the Middle East Institute. I studied Arabic and Hebrew. And I've been to many Arab countries as well as Israel many times. So I have some background in this arena. And the summary of my thing, that is my presentation. You asked for a quick 30,000-foot view. It's very simple. It's really one sentence. One side wants the other side dead. And I said this 10 years ago. It was true 75 years ago. And now people can believe it literally. One side wants the other dead. In fact, I even said, and people could see it in the video, I said, imagine this. Israel announces we are giving up all our arms and we will fight no more. What happens the next day? Imagine the Palestinians say, we will give up all our arms and stop fighting. What happens the next day? And I said, in the second case, the next day, there will be peace. In the first case, there will be genocide, the eradicating of all the Jews of Israel. And people might have thought I was exaggerating. I wasn't.
Dennis, one of the things that I hear, and again, forgive my ignorance, you're the scholar on this, I am not. So I'm asking only things that I hear constantly. You read on X, formerly Twitter, and on the news. I hear this all the time. What of the peaceful Palestinians? Is in your view, is there such a thing? And if so, what of them?
So I have a dark answer. It would be analogous to asking, what about the wonderful Germans in the 1930s? Yep. There were wonderful Germans, but they had no power.
Yeah.
The Nazis had the power. And the Palestinian version of Nazis, and they are, and I've never said of any other group in my life that they are Nazis, they are. Hitler sought, the German Nazis sought to kill every Jew in Europe, and they seek to kill every Jew in Israel. They and Hezbollah and the Ayatollahs in Iran. So the existence of nice Arabs is of minimal consequence.
So when Ron DeSantis says about Nikki Haley bringing Palestinian refugees to the United States, when DeSantis says, are you crazy? Don't you know what they're told? Don't you know they're taught to hate America? I assume you would concur with DeSantis' assessment there.
Yes, with the understanding that a certain number of them will be peace-loving, fine people. That is correct. But a certain percentage will be America-hating and Jew-hating murderers. So you can't deny what was just said because it's unpleasant. Much of reality is unpleasant.
Yeah, amen. Joe Biden traveling there. I don't know what the purpose of his travel is, quite frankly. I don't know what the Israeli government thinks of Joe Biden. Do you have a sense of it? I was told by people, I guess, that are in the know that they're very, very happy with the Biden administration response. I thought it very slow. 4 days it took for him to respond publicly.
So, yeah, I have minimal expectations of this president and of the Democratic Party. So I was actually pleased with his statement. But if that's all one says, one is not being honest. He unfortunately helped make this possible. Iran directed it, which the United States is denying. They said they have seen no proof. That's jargon. Everybody knows. My 13-year-old grandson knows Iran was behind this. Hamas doesn't operate without the permission or the go-ahead or the red light of the Iranian regime. Same with Hezbollah in Lebanon. They're controlled by the Iranian regime. And he and his predecessor of the Democratic Party, Barack Obama, made them as strong as they are. So I believe that one has to tell the truth. His speech on behalf of Israel was excellent. However, he also, in my opinion and the opinion of many, made this possible by strengthening the Iranian regime.
Here's the other criticism of Netanyahu and I guess the Israeli stance is not the word, but I guess for want of a better term, their lack of preparedness, people have criticized and said, how is it possible that they missed something this massive of an incursion? How could they have missed it? What do you say to that?
It's a completely honest question. I am stunned. I am absolutely stunned. As one young Israeli woman, I think she's in the army or was in the army, said in a Hebrew language, I know Hebrew, so I heard her say it, but I think there are also subtitles in English, said, there are people monitoring that fence 24/7. If a goat goes to the fence, we know about it. She's puzzled. I am puzzled. My producer, for whom I have immense respect, says, Dennis, you have to understand the capacity of human beings to screw things up is unlimited. You don't give enough credit to human error, to human carelessness. And he may well be right. But the carelessness and error is so grotesque that, look, I am not even implying that some conspiracy took place here. I am only saying that to believe that it is only error is to stretch credulity. However, it is possible.
And that's kind of where I want to go, because you know social media, it's an ugly place. It seems there are some who take this position. It's so implausible that something on this scale would happen. It had to have been allowed to happen. I've read that a number of times.
Right. The question, yes, I understand that. And it is not a silly idea. However, you can't allow it to happen by just one person's statement. I don't believe that the prime minister is the commander-in-chief as the president in the United States is the commander-in-chief. I may be wrong, but I don't believe that. First of all, Israel has no constitution, so it's hard to imagine that would be applicable. So what does it mean? The heads of the army were in on it too. Let's not do anything while our fellow Jews are burned alive. I don't know the answer. I can only say that I don't dismiss the people asking these questions as kooks or anti-Semites or anti-Israel. They, in fact, lovers of Israel are asking this question. However, my producer may be right. Incompetence is a big deal in life.
I have been told that, again, I don't know. I defer to you. Israel, you'll correct me if I'm wrong. Israel has a deep state, if you will, very similar to ours, a military-industrial complex that may almost operate autonomously. Is that your sense of it?
I have no idea. I admit that that's not something I have heard. It's a citizen army, unlike the United States, where we have a volunteer army. The amount of corruption that would have to exist and to have eluded the average citizen makes it less likely than people might think. That's one of the reasons I'm so puzzled. Why did it take hours for? In hours you could cross all of Israel.
Yes.
This is not the United States of America. This is the size of New Jersey. If people were being massacred in Camden, New Jersey, would it take 5 hours for police to show up?
Dennis, you were kind enough to give us your time last month. You came to Philadelphia. You and I sat on stage and you talked about school choice. We talked about educating our youth. I mean, I suspect when you're talking about conflicts like these, well, let me ask you that first. What do you think most kids are taught about conflicts like these, the Middle East and Israel generally today, in public school, if at all?
You didn't need to add about conflicts like these. Just, you could have stopped with, Dennis, what do you think kids are taught? Because I already had, I had an answer. Okay. Nothing.
Yeah.
They're taught almost nothing. I devoted an hour of my show today to, of all places, a New York Times article about how little they are learning because, among other reasons, there's great inflation and you can no longer get rid of rowdy students. In my corrupt state of California, which Californian corruption is redundant, there is now a rule: you cannot dismiss rowdy students.
I saw this. Willful defiance is allowed now.
Willful defiance is allowed, yes. So I said this as long as I have been broadcasting, 40 years. In 1962, when the Supreme Court of the United States ruled against prayer in school, children went in one generation from blessing their teachers, it was actually a blessing over teachers, to cursing their teachers. The left has created this entire issue. They have ruined our schools because if one knows only one thing about modern life, one should know this. Everything the left touches, it destroys. Schools is one example.
Do you believe we have to wrest education away from the Marxist in our midst in order to save the future of the country? I mean, our youth and our young people, if they're not taught properly, is there any way to save the country fundamentally?
No, not really. And so the question is, how do you do that? And one is school choice. Another is school boards. And my favorite is get them the hell out of the entire system and let it collapse so that we can build something beautiful. In the meantime, the most wonderful thing people could do for this country is homeschool their children.
You said something really, I think, important but provocative, because I don't know if anybody had ever heard it before. You specifically mentioned the role of women today in this educational crisis. I don't know if you recall having said what you said, but if you do...
Oh yeah, of course. I wrote a whole column on it. People can find it on the internet.
Please recite it
I
again.
stand by this.
Yeah.
Women are playing a wildly disproportionate role in ruining children. Ooh. I don't mean as mothers. I mean as people in the education system, people advocating that we teach children that they're not boys or girls. They'll determine whether they're a boy or a girl. Drag Queen Story Hour, the death of standards in education, because we don't want any kid to think ill of himself if he only has a grade of 50, so we'll pass him anyway. This is overwhelmingly done by women. 85% of librarians are women. That's where many Drag Queen Story Hours are taking place. About 85% or so of kindergarten teachers are women. A vast majority of school principals are women. The vast majority of elementary school teachers are women. And if we have no problem acknowledging that men disproportionately commit violent crime, if we care about honesty and we don't fear what the left will say about us, because you can't be honest if you fear the left, because truth is not a left-wing value, then you will just as readily acknowledge the disproportionate role women are playing in hurting children.
Man, that's Dennis Prager. That's as honest and as raw as it gets. Dennis, you started PragerU, I think, with education in mind, did you not? And of course, it's exploded, and it's now curriculum across the country.
Well, across the country, from your mouth to God's ears, but certainly in certain states across the country.
New to Texas,
I'll give an example. Right? I'm sorry. Yes,
new
Texas.
To Texas, yeah.
Yes, that's the next one. Yes, Oklahoma and Florida. I think New Hampshire. So I just will leave you and your listeners with this. Anyone who wants to understand the Middle East would do better watching all the PragerU videos, and they're all only 5 minutes, on the Middle East, and there are about 20 of them, than going for a graduate degree in Middle Eastern studies. I know this because I went to graduate school at the Middle East Institute of Columbia University, studied Arabic and Hebrew, and I've been to that area of the world many times. And I can tell you, you will learn more about the Middle East dispute watching PragerU videos than getting a PhD in Middle East studies at Princeton.
And listening to your show. Let's not forget your show.
Thank you.
Dennis Prager, it's a pleasure. Thank you, sir. There have been some listeners to this podcast for a while that are great supporters and friends, and now they've decided to jump in and become sponsors. I'm proud to have them aboard. They're guys that operate a website called gulagamerica.com. They try to have a little fun and a little irreverence with the very real state of affairs we find ourselves in these days. In fact, regularly when I post something on social media, you'll see them come in and they'll say something like, "That's Gulag America." Well, that's a brand name. That's actually what they've been trying to frame so much of what we're living through, what they call Gulag America. They've been great supporters of the Harum Society as well, founders, as a matter of fact. I'm so pleased and proud to have them as sponsors. Gulagamerica.com. Go to their website, your online home for what they call apparel with attitude. I think you're going to dig it. If you're unhappy with the direction the country is headed, I think that speaks for itself for most of this audience. If you're dismayed that 3/4 of Democrats and half of Republicans want the government to restrict hate speech, potentially meaning shows like this one, podcasts like this one, that's Gulag America. Go to gulagamerica.com. They're the shop for you. They have everything from American classics like Gadsden flag shirts that say "Don't Tread on Me," to original designs ripped from the headlines, like the recent edition that reads, "Mask me once, shame on you. Mask me twice, shame on me." Pretty good. That and so many more. Great shirts, great apparel. Gulagamerica.com. Great supporters of this show, great American patriots and friends and founding members of the Harum Society. Honored to have them aboard. Gulagamerica.com. As they say, Gulag America, it's not our wish, it's our warning. Gulagamerica.com. Welcome aboard, fellas. Do we care what AOC has to say? I see she's been jabbering quite a bit about the war brewing between Hamas and Israel. Okay, why not? Asking AOC about why she voted against Iron Dome funding. Let's take a listen to that.
A couple of years ago, there was a vote in Congress for funding for the Iron Dome, and you very publicly were torn, even emotional about your vote, which ultimately was present. You put out a statement saying that you opposed Iron Dome funding. I wonder, given everything that we've seen in this last week, the Iron Dome has essentially intercepted thousands of rockets from Hamas. Do you believe now that funding is essential? Would you vote for it today?
And to be clear, at that time, I had voted present on the Iron Dome funding because of what we had seen previously that year in terms of Netanyahu's decisions, which also resulted in the bombing of several buildings that contain media agencies, civilian targets. However, I do think that in this present moment, when we discuss support for Israeli defense systems, that is absolutely legitimate. I think it is absolutely something that whose support we can. So
you would vote yes today if it came to the United States Congress, additional funding for the Iron Dome?
I think if it was explicitly around that. I have concerns about white phosphorus. I have concerns about the respect for humanitarian, about human rights.
Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, one more quick one. Should Arab countries be taking in these Palestinian refugees instead of us? Should Arab countries be taking them in? Take a listen to the geopolitical brain of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Should Arab countries be taking on the lion's share of the burden to absorb what could be over 1 million, if not more, refugees from Gaza?
I think there's something to be said about the region's partners being able to support and step up Palestinians. However, that does not abdicate the United States from our historic role that we've played in the world. of accepting refugees and allowing people to restart their lives here.
I know conservative young women. I work alongside several who come out of places like Turning Points or Heritage or have worked in Congress. I know many, many, many brilliant, bright, rising stars amongst conservative women. So I say, in deference to all of them, this woman, on the other hand, sounds like someone we just dragged out of a sorority party. John Hayward is the national security deputy editor at Breitbart. I play it only because these are supposedly the luminaries on the Democrat side today. These are some of the most important figures of our time on the Democrat side. John Hayward, good morning.
Yeah, I mean, you're asking, should we pay attention to her? She's influential with Democrats, so I guess you kind of have to. It doesn't matter that she's dim, or that listening to her speak is like a form of torture. She has influence. People listen to her. She has a huge online following. So what she says and does matters, and she needs to be held accountable for it. And when her pals in Hamas were over there slaughtering Jews, raping women, murdering children, she was as quiet as a church mouse. She disappeared for days on end, and everybody noticed. Where'd she go? She's usually such a loudmouth. She's not saying anything. She crawled under a rock and she hid there, and then she came out from under the rock later when the Jewish response began, the Israeli response. So she doesn't like seeing Jews defend themselves. So she came out from under the rock, and suddenly she gets real loud and starts criticizing Israel for everything it does. She's dim, but she's evil, and the fact that she's a nasty piece of work is more important than her lack of intellectual heft.
Unrelated, but I guess somewhat related. Chuck Schumer over in the Senate yesterday, Bob Menendez is brought up. I'm not going to play it again. I played it earlier, but they ask Bob Menendez, or they ask about Bob Menendez. Should he be in these intelligence briefings? Should he be participating? Shouldn't you call on him to step down? Like, it looks pretty bad. And no, like he said, we've had stern conversations with Bob. These things look bad, but we've had stern, and he won't go any further. Like, they will not. It doesn't matter. Literally, if you're caught red-handed committing crimes, the Democrat Party will not. You got to give them that. Solidarity is theirs every time, no matter what, no matter how bad it gets. They always hang tough together.
Yeah, one of the things about them that's such a contrast is that the Democrats will never openly admit that a Republican criticism of them is accurate. They'll never say, Bob Menendez is a crook and he's a traitor and he can't be trusted. They'll never even come close to admitting any of that is true. They'll militantly deny that, and Republicans don't do that. You notice that, as we see in the Speaker of the House battle, when the Republicans decide to have an internal food fight, they can't wait to enlist Democrats for help and repeat their talking points and parrot their criticisms, and they bludgeon each other. It's one of the big reasons Republicans are the stupid party. They'll do it every time. They're constantly pumping oxygen into whatever the Democrats are criticizing them for. They're constantly throwing gas on the fire. But Democrats, you can have just an outright crook. Bob Menendez is taking bribes in gold bullion, and they still can't admit that maybe he shouldn't be receiving intelligence briefings. And honestly, neither should the squad. Nobody in Ocasio-Cortez's crew, especially Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, they're walking, talking, living, breathing Hamas sympathizing security risks. They shouldn't be allowed anywhere near classified information ever. They shouldn't be in Congress. I mean, once the Republicans are together, they need to start cleansing Congress of their influence, and neither one of them should be allowed to sit there. But they absolutely shouldn't be getting intelligence briefings. That's crazy.
Meanwhile, John Hayward from Breitbart, he's the national security deputy editor there once again. Meanwhile, the Husk over there pretending to do something, I guess, as he sits down with Benjamin Netanyahu. I don't exactly know what. I read the headlines this morning. Biden says he's pretty confident now this rocket that hit the hospital in Gaza wasn't fired by Israel. That thing, again, what is it? A lie can travel halfway around the world before the truth gets its pants on in the morning or something. Katie Pavlich had written about this at Town Hall as well. Hamas lies and says Israel fires a rocket on a hospital in Gaza, when in fact now there's every reason to believe, and I think evidence to suggest, that it was a Hamas rocket that fell short and landed on the hospital. But it doesn't matter. A lot of our own media parroted that.
Which is just to watch. For years, we've been listening to these media people lecture us about disinformation, and they're going to be fact checkers, and they're going to fact check everything in real time. And then Hamas, a savage, barbaric terrorist organization that just pulled off one of the worst atrocities in human history, they put out a press release that says, the Israelis blew up a hospital and killed 500 people. And all these press organizations just run like the wind. Fact check, nope. Verification, nope. We don't care. Hot stuff. Let's go. Hamas press release right to the front pages. And then then that feeds into the Rashida Tlaibs and Ilhan Omars. They repeat it, and that has immediate real-world consequences. Jordan canceled a big meeting that Biden was supposed to be at because of the hospital bombings, supposedly, and there's all these riots happening in countries across the Middle East as angry mobs are attacking Israeli embassies in Jordan, and I think there was another one in another country. But I mean, there's a lot of this violence all over the place, and that's because of this false report. And our media could not wait to spread Hamas propaganda. Not only did they not fact-check it, but they should have known it was coming from an organization defined by its evil and its lies. Could you imagine Hitler's Germany putting out some statement and the press is saying, yep, let's run with this, kids, front page. No need to fact-check. Let's get it out there.
John, do you think, and maybe this is an obvious thing and not that profound, but it seems like we're covering things like this differently now, largely thanks to Elon Musk's X. Is that a big factor here, the X factor, in terms of the way we're getting information and people, mainstream media, are not as readily able to lie?
Sure, and maybe even more importantly, they can't suppress all the images. That's one of the things that happened after the Hamas attack. We saw some of these really gruesome images that came out of it. That counted for a lot. They really tried to downpedal that immediately after the attack happened, and they couldn't do it. They tried to deny some of the worst atrocities, and pictures were posted, and people could see it with their own eyes. And it really matters that we're talking, that we're sharing images, that we're going around the so-called media gatekeepers. And with this Hamas rocket story, once again, you have proof that the American mainstream media, the Democrat Party media, they can't be trusted as information gatekeepers. No way, no how. Not a chance.
What do we know? I know you profiled some of this at Breitbart, John Hayward, that we now know that some specific names of Americans that are being held in Gaza, right?
Some, but isn't it amazing how little that we know? If this was a Republican administration, if Trump was in the White House, there would be countdown timers on every news show.
Yes.
Hostage crisis, day 14. Trump's hostage crisis, day 14. And they'd be running stories. Can Trump survive this? Can the Republican administration endure these Americans being taken prisoner and them not doing anything about it? And you would know who all those hostages were. I guarantee it. You would have profiles running in every media magazine of who they are and what they were doing in Israel when they were kidnapped. And instead, we just know a couple of them. And some of them we don't know because of the government or the media. We know because their families are running out there and saying, hey, my mother, my daughter, my sister, my brother was taken hostage by Hamas.
By the way, I can't confirm this. My wife actually just texted me this morning and said that Biden is supposedly was quoted as saying that the rocket attack we were just talking about that fell on the hospital, my wife claims that he says, quote, it looks like it was from the other team.
Yeah, that's what he said.
He did say that? I missed that. Okay.
Yes.
Wow. Way to, I mean, good Lord. The other team.
Again, if this was a Republican, the media would be in an uproar over him saying something like that. But, and also, because it's Hamas, they don't really mind as much if he describes them as like a football team, like these are two equal parties, Israel and Hamas. Well, they're the same. We have to be neutral between them. They aren't framing this as bloodthirsty medieval savages and civilization fighting back against them.
The other team. What is he watching postseason baseball too much now, the Husk?
Yeah, who knows? Maybe some football.
John, I don't know what this looks like or how it ends. I do know that there are a lot of people. I talked with Dennis Prager, who I think is as pro-Israel as they come, clearly, and Jewish. But even he said, listen, it is not unfair or unreasonable for people to be asking, how did Israel fall down on their defenses so badly? And he didn't even mind that people are suggesting, because it's so curious, the level of a coordinated attack getting by Israeli intelligence makes no sense. Dennis says he can't explain it. It doesn't make any sense. Is that a fair conversation to be having?
It is a legitimate question, absolutely. And I guarantee you a lot of people in Israel are going to be asking it when this is all stabilized. There's going to be political fallout for this. So heads are going to roll in the Israeli military and government because this happened. But I think it is important to study with precision why it happened and how Hamas was able to pull this off. And one interesting little tidbit is that the South Korean military said that they're studying all this because they think Hamas was trained by the North Koreans. They see a lot of similarities in their tactics between the way they've seen North Korean soldiers drill drilling for attacking South Korea, and they're adjusting their defenses to trying to basically learn from Israel's mistakes and make sure they don't fall for the same thing. So a swift attack launched from a lot of different positions, slow-moving ultralight air vehicles, paragliders, those little planes they were buzzing around in. I mean, that seems to have been the key to baffling Israel's air defenses. That wasn't what they were looking for. And I hazard a guess that if some Israeli soldiers saw a couple of paragliders zipping around and he had a weapon that could hit them, they would hesitate to pull that trigger because they don't want headlines tomorrow, Israel guns down innocent Palestinian paragliders. I think that might be one reason they hesitated to pull the trigger. And if you look at everything happening today, you can see why they would feel that way. You can see why they would have been trained to be very, very sure before they do anything.
So I hear that a lot of the surrounding Middle Eastern countries are basically turning their backs on Blinken and the Husk, and Americans visiting there generally trying to strike some sort of resolve. How do you read that?
Yeah, absolutely they are. Blinken especially is an empty suit, and nobody's giving him the time of day. And he looks so helpless. Every time you see Anthony Blinken, he's just gasping in surprise. His eyes are bugging out. He can't believe what he sees happening around him. He has no cachet, no respect. He doesn't get any doors open when he goes somewhere. So having an inept Secretary of State is a problem. Having a president that's mentally incapacitated is definitely a problem. In the Arab world, a big thing about them is that they respect strength, and they tend to turn their backs on weakness. And when they see this shambling Husk stroll up with drool leaking out of his cheek, they don't respect him. They don't see that as strength. And Anthony Blinken, that isn't strength to them. So right now they're hedging their bets. They're not sure which way this is going to go, but they know that some of them have populations that would turn against them. Even if the leaders of some of these Arab countries really wanted to go in and stand by Israel or by us, they know their populations would not like it. So the smart play for them is to keep their doors shut and their lips zipped and just keep saying how much they worry about Palestinian civilians until this is over.
There's a weird debate amongst some Republicans, I guess. I haven't really heard it. Mostly I read DeSantis responding to it because he's always the one that asked. But there's some weird debate about whether we in the United States should be responsible for taking Palestinian refugees. I guess people like Nikki Haley are suggesting yes. And DeSantis is saying, what are you, nuts? No. So I don't know how big a debate that is, but what do you know of it?
Well, it's a debate, and I can understand the humanitarian impulse from people that want to help, but no, DeSantis is right. No, hell no. We're not going to take any Palestinian refugees. For one thing, we're full. Thanks to Joe Biden's open borders, our cities are overrun. We've got governors and mayors. You've got like the mayor of New York just on his knees blubbering like a baby because he can't handle the refugees. You try jumping 300,000 Palestinians on him and see what he says. That's it. The open borders thing has completely overwhelmed us. We probably need to think about choking off legal immigration for a while, which I hate to say because I'm all in favor of it normally, but it might make sense to start reducing or even zeroing out legal immigration for a few years until we can process all the illegals, and get some of them back over the border. But no, we absolutely do not have the capacity to take Palestinians, and even if we did, they're not a group you want to take. This is you're importing a savage pathology. If you take a lot of Palestinian refugees, we don't need that. It's a security risk, and you'll notice no of the Arab nations will take them. All these Arab countries that say the Palestinians are their brothers and they care about them and the Palestinian people, yada, 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 they would gun every mother's son of the Palestinians down dead if they tried to cross their borders. They wouldn't hesitate. Egypt, if the Palestinians storm that border crossing, they'll kill them wholesale. They don't want to take Palestinians. Some of them have Palestinian populations. They don't like them. They're restless. They're troublesome. Some of them don't have any Palestinians, but they look at Jordan and they see the pickle layering because half their population is Palestinians and they want no part of it.
Wow. Okay. I didn't see that. We always learn something from you. I didn't know that. Meanwhile, smartly, I mean, I give them credit, smartly, the White House is winking, saying, gosh, we're going to need we need $100 billion for the border and for Ukraine and for Israel, Congress. We're going to need money. So the White House comes out with that ask yesterday. All of a sudden now we're asking Congress, but you Republicans are in disarray. I mean, you can see it from downtown. The Democrats do this better than Republicans do, right?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about that. And unfortunately, again, we don't have room for refugees. We don't have resources for refugees. We don't have any money. We're beyond broke. We're accelerating into an absolute fiscal collapse. So we're going to have to start looking really carefully at the money that we spend. And we may not have $1 trillion to give Ukraine or $1 trillion to spend in Israel. And I don't think Israel would want as much as Ukraine does. But I mean, we're broke. It doesn't even matter what we think is a good idea or what we feel in our hearts. We don't have the money to do all this stuff. And if they're going to start pumping out all this military support, then we're going to start needing to see this administration and the Democratic Party giving us lists of the domestic spending they're prepared to cut in order to finance all of this other stuff. They're going to have to start telling us where this money is going to come from. And that means you're going to have to start firing a lot of federal employees and shutting down some buildings, kids.
Yes, amen. And now let's turn briefly, John Hayward, and I'll let you run on this. The Republican fighting for Speaker of the House. Look, I think it's a principled discussion. As we are discussing the people with the power of the purse strings in this country, who's going to lead them? I don't mind having that fight. I'm not afraid of it. I don't know about you, but isn't that what it's about, really? For some, I think.
That was always my problem with the Kevin McCarthy debacle. I'm not necessarily married to this guy. If they want to get rid of him, and I know the reasons why some people didn't like him, fair enough. But you don't do that without a plan to replace him. You don't do that until your pieces are in place to make it a smooth transition. And that isn't what happened. As it turned out, a very small number of Republicans teamed up with all of the Democrats to bounce McCarthy out. And now to hear the Democrats complaining about disarray is hilarious. You guys caused it. What were there, 8 Republican votes that got rid of McCarthy? The rest are all Democrats. I mean, the Democrats are the ones that unleash this chaos in the Congress, and they're going to profit from it politically. But, we can look at this and say, gee, maybe you guys should have thought a little harder about what it was going to do to Congress when you bounced the Speaker out before all of you joined in the effort to make it happen. And now that we are where we are, the Republican caucus needs to find somebody that they can get behind and put in there. And it's time to start setting aside some petty grievances and just make it happen. I think they've got another few days, maybe another week to get this done. And if they wait much longer than that, they're going to get killed with this narrative about how the Congress is in disarray and the Republicans are useless.
John Hayward is always the very, very best when it comes to thinking and thought leadership. He's who I turn to, the National Security Deputy Editor at Breitbart. He's Doc_0 on X, formerly Twitter. John, it's a pleasure. Thank you, sir. Well, look, he doesn't take any delight in it, but I have a feeling that somewhere in the corner of Mike's mind, he's a good man who would never say this aloud, but Mike Lindell at MyPillow might feel just a smidge of schadenfreude at the news that Bed Bath & Beyond has gone bankrupt. Yeah, the company that first threw Mike's pillows and products out of their store has now filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Well, I can tell you at MyPillow.com, they're anything but bankrupt. They are fantastic. They are high quality. They are doing well by their customers, and they don't need a retailer like Kohl's or Bed Bath & Beyond. Yes, they sold their products and sold them well until politics got in the way, so Mike just took it all online, and MyPillow.com is roaring. He also sells at his store the My Coffee, which I drink now and love, and I hope you'll go online and order all of it. And I hope you'll use my name, Chris Podcast, when you do it. If you go to Chris Podcast as your promo code when you go to MyPillow.com, Chris Podcast, you'll get up to 80% on a lot on that website. You'll get discounts regardless, but particularly some of the clearance stuff, you'll save ridiculous money. So please use the promo code Chris Podcast when you order, and I do hope you do. We have an entire bed outfitted with MyPillow stuff now. We've got the sheets, we've got the blanket, we've got the pillows. Even Dean has his own MyPillow dog bed. Like I said, I drink the MyPillow, or it's not MyPillow coffee. It's called My Coffee. I keep screwing that up. That would be weird if it was pillow coffee. No, it's coffee, which I sip sometimes while leaning against MyPillow. The MyPillow 2.0, the mattress topper, which is like a brand new mattress without paying for a brand new mattress. He'll ship that mattress topper to you for free if you use my promo code Chris Podcast right now. It's covered in that new 2.0 fabric. So are his pillows that keep you cool all night long. He'll send you a second MyPillow 2.0 if you use my promo code Chris Podcast. For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, it's true. He's made me a believer. Dean, my dog, as well. The slippers, the towels, the bed sheets, the pajamas, and so much more. And yes, even the coffee. Go to mypillow.com. Use the promo code ChrisPodcast and save, or call today 800-932-5056. 800-932-5056. Who needs Bed Bath & Beyond anyway? mypillow.com, promo code ChrisPodcast. How about this? It's been a while. We're scheduled tomorrow to be speaking with David Limbaugh. It has been a very, very long time since we've talked with David. I know how much you miss his brother. I certainly do. More than ever right now, I do. Wouldn't you love to hear what Rush Limbaugh has to say about what's going on in the House Speaker fight? I think I know. I talk with a very good friend of his about what I think Rush would say, but I would never presume to say so on the air. I do talk with a very good friend of his about what we think he'd say. It's a fun game we play. What might Rush say were he here? Emerald Robinson hosts The Absolute Truth with Emerald Robinson, now every day at 4 in the p.m. You can watch it anytime. If you get the Frank Speech app, you can go to Getter or Twitter. She's at Emerald Robinson on both. She's on Substack, celebrating a couple of years there now with a huge following, emerald.tv. So there's no excuse to be without Emerald every single day. We're glad she makes time with us on Wednesdays. Hi, Emerald.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Always an honor. I don't know if you were a big Rush Limbaugh listener, but somehow there was something about him, without ever inserting himself directly, you knew that Capitol Hill Republicans listened and cared what he had to say. And it wasn't about him calling them up like Sean likes to pretend he can. Rush just spoke and he just said. And often Republicans moved because he said, not because he bullied them on his show or whatever, right? That was the difference.
That's absolutely how it was. And I was a big Rush fan. I listened to him, oh my gosh, since I was young, but I really have Rush to thank a lot for this, increasing my platform. I mean, I have him a lot to thank for the success in my career. I had written an article or commentary called The Collapse of the Never Trump Conservatives, and it was featured in the Spectator magazine or Spectator Online. And I remember standing at the White House one day, and I was doing my normal reporting from the White House, and all of a sudden my phone starts blowing up from everyone, because everyone listens to Rush, as you just said. He had shared excerpts of the article on air, and that's what really put me on the radar and caused my White House reporting to take off. It was such a huge loss to lose Rush, and I think a lot of his brother David Limbaugh as well. So it's great to hear that he's going to be on the show tomorrow. A great family.
The sheer power of that show, and the reason I'm ruminating on it a little bit is to get to where we find ourselves today. As you say, he would. It was, if he'd play a clip from our show. And now, I never met him, so he didn't know me, and he'd always call me Chris Stigall, and people would have hilarious fun that he called me Stigall. I didn't care. He can butcher my name all he wants, but when he, like you said, when he would just mention your name, I would get calls from all over the country. Rush just talked about you. He screwed up your name, but he talked about you. And so the reason I say all that is, without his voice, now it's just a food fight, it seems, and I'm not afraid of the fight, but I'm not sure this chaos would exist if Rush were here to kind of give a clarifying direction, an opinion.
It would probably be harder. I feel like I'll speculate. And like you said, you don't speculate on air. That's probably a good idea. But I do think he would be giving these 20 who are not voting for Jim Jordan a very, very hard time. And like you said, he was so influential that some of these would not, had Rush, been talking about this on his show, some of them probably wouldn't be holding out the way they are, because they would be getting calls nonstop from people across the country, because that's just how it worked. And like you said, I mean, it's interesting. There's a lot of great people out there in radio like yourself, but they have no one's quite filled that spot.
No.
The hole that Rush has left, because there are big shoes to fill, and thus far it just hasn't happened. So yeah, it's
And I don't know.
It'll be interesting to hear what he had to say about a lot of things right now.
Yeah, like I don't know if we're better off for it or not. I struggle with that sometimes because, everyone misses him, and it was nice to have somebody that we could all sort of rally around. Without that figure, it just feels like the Wild West. And now it's just strange to see people like, Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson feuding. And in one sense, I suppose it's kind of healthy. But, when Rush was here, that all kind of abated or subsided. Because once Rush said it, I think most people felt like, okay, well, he said it. Get in line. There's none of that now. It's just sniping. Yeah.
There is an argument to be made. It is interesting because I feel like we have a lot more debate.
Yeah.
Than
maybe
we did
that's
for
good.
a while.
Maybe that's good.
In the conservative side, I think it's good, especially because I feel like there is what has been taboo to discuss before.
Yep.
Is getting brought up in debate and conversation. And there's some ideas that have needed to change, right? There are some practices that have needed to change. So I do think it's healthy, but it's not without its growing pains, without some people who have pretended to be conservative or Republican in the party, without them whining and crying and lashing out. So that tells you that there's a shift, which I do ultimately think is for the good, because there's a lot of people that went along and thought everything was under control for so many years. I was one of those people until I started covering D.C. on a day-to-day basis. And I can't even tell you, Chris, it was just such a wake-up call. I couldn't believe what I was seeing and how the sausage was made.
Yeah.
And I just thought, gosh, wow, if Americans really understood this, if everyone could come and see this, they would be very worried. But I am glad, and I just was having this discussion on my show yesterday, is that we were talking about the great replacement theory, that Tucker started talking about a few years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago. And that brought it into the mainstream conversation. Before that, it was a taboo topic. And people 30 years ago were canceled, even by conservatives, by their conservative colleagues, so-called conservative colleagues, for talking about it. And now it's accepted as, what is going on in conservative circles and on the right, and by conservative thinkers and pundits and scholars, and you're no longer canceled for it. So there is a movement with this debate to discuss those what have previously been off the table topics, and that is good, because then we might get some real change.
So the White House cleverly yesterday, I know you'll appreciate this, very, very cleverly. The White House says, gosh, we're going to need help. We're going to need aid for Israel and, of course, Ukraine. And, gosh, we got to do something about the border. Now, it's hilarious to me because the White House, you never hear about the White House asking Congress for anything. All you ever hear is the White House says Ukraine can have this. The White House says Israel will get this. I don't know where the money comes from. He's like Oprah, Biden now. He just comes out and says, you get a car and you get a car. It's like, but now suddenly the White House needs Congress's help to give Israel aid. And they did it on purpose because the House is in chaos and they control the purse. And I don't mean chaos in a bad way, but that's the strategy.
It's plausible deniability, right?
Right.
It's their safe go-to. They don't have to do it if they say Congress, which is in the middle of a speaker battle, has to do this. Then they can say, oh, well, look, we tried. We were willing to do it. It's a way to just blame to the Republicans. But still, I think most people prefer not to see the Ukraine and Israel aid tied together, right?
Right.
And we don't even know what breakdown they're asking for, I don't think. They want $100 billion, right? It seems to be the price tag that's always thrown out there.
Yeah.
Which is $100 billion here now. Remember it used to be like $1 million?
Yeah.
And it quickly now has escalated to $100 billion here, $100 billion there, and nobody bats an eye.
Yeah, $100 billion. It's like my teenagers ask for lunch money now. Hey, Dad, can I have 10 or 15 or $20 for lunch? Now we just say, here's $100 billion.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I think even 20 now, they're like, oh, is that all you're giving me? Because I have a niece. And I remember she's in college now. It's her freshman year, and she goes to Applebee's to eat. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Because, I had to eat on campus, and every once in a while I got $5 to go get something else, like a taco at the local Mexican restaurant. And that was a real treat. You could choose between the 2 chicken tacos or a cheese dip and chips for your $5.
Emerald, I'm sure you're discussing, obviously, the conflict, the war going on between Israel and Hamas. I talked with Dennis Prager earlier this morning, and I was very intrigued that Dennis, I said, listen, Dennis, you have colleagues, we have colleagues who are openly asking the question, did Israel allow this to happen? And he said he was not unwilling to hear the question. He said, I don't think that's a kooky question. He really, as a Jew and very pro-Israel, Dennis said, this is inexplicable. I cannot explain how it was allowed to happen. He didn't go as far as to say it's a conspiracy. He said, but I totally understand the legitimacy of the question. So I appreciated Dennis's candor there.
Wow.
I was kind of surprised.
I'm very surprised by that because this is another situation, talking about taboo topics, it's very difficult to have a, rational discussion about it because there's so many labels thrown out there. And that question, which I feel is a very valid question, I was shocked that it was happening, right? Mm-hmm. You just seem not to be allowed to ask it without receiving a label. And there's lots of, and when we're talking about intelligence failures, especially between the United States and Israel, and you go back to sort of the beginning of Hamas, you're not allowed to ask that either. And I think that a lot of relevant questions should be asked. Now, Hamas is a terrorist group. And so then you got some of these people who, especially on the left, who are suggesting, they call them all kinds of things but won't call them terrorists. No, it's a terrorist group. Yep. They do go, they hold women and children hostage and use them as shields for optics, right? But, here's the thing, and Ron Paul was always very good about pointing this out when he was in Congress, is that Israel funded and helped create Hamas, essentially, by their funding to counter Yasser Arafat and the PLO, which was more of a secular movement, right? And to also help prevent a two-state solution, which you understand that there's all kinds of tactics, and the U.S. has played that tactics in areas like the Middle East, funding rebel groups that go out of control.
We created the Taliban, effectively. We reinstalled the Taliban in Afghanistan. The United States did that. That's Charlie Wilson's war. That's what that whole movie's about.
Have the conversation as to why do we continue to use this failed topic? Tactic, the U.S. and Israel, and man, have I gotten some flack for that. I just want
because you know what it sounds like. Here's what it sounds like. First of all, people, because inevitably you get lumped into 9/11 was an inside job, and you start talking about that, and I just look. I can't know. I mean, my sons, they go down YouTube rabbit holes and they come up and ask me, "Do you believe this, Dad? Do you think this?" And I always tell them, I said, I can't know. I don't spend a great deal of time thinking about things I could never possibly verify. There's just no way I could ever. I'm not against people asking questions, but yeah, you're right. There's this kind of thing where you're immediately branded as a kook or a bigot. Worse still, it's what are you, some anti-Jewish bigot or something? And I don't think it's that at all.
Not it at all.
Yeah.
We need to know how to proceed going forward. And groups like Hamas absolutely have to be shut down, but then we shouldn't create them again.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep, right.
Let's shut it down and let's not create it again.
Yeah.
Okay? Nobody. And so I never am one to just look at, and I was on a panel with someone and he said, well, it's just black and white. And then you can get into that and say, well, I know, who the Hamas is terrorists. They are terrorists. Okay, that is for sure. But then we have to look at it's nuanced, because in order to proceed forward and to have a better outcome in the future and to protect Israeli and Jewish people, right? Yes. If that is our goal, we have to look at the whole picture and say, how do we prevent this from happening? And that goes back to, how did this start happening? And so I just want everyone to be clear-headed, and those images are horrific. And I want to understand how that Hamas was able to breach Israeli security, because they are known. I mean, in the Mossad, Israeli intelligence, come on. That's like the top tier. Our intelligence looks to them because they are so superior at what they do. So how did this happen? And then you have the Egyptian government being adamant that they gave this intelligence. You had Michael McCall from the House, Foreign Affairs Committee. I mean, this is what he does say, that they were told that. There are just so many questions, and I think they have to be asked, and they can be done and just because you ask them does not make you a Hamas sympathizer, right? Because everyone is for this Israel as a sovereign country, protecting its borders and defending its citizens.
Yeah, it's always about nuance, and we don't do that very well in this country. We get emotional. We look at pictures. We want to react, and we want to spring into action, and we say women and children have been killed and slaughtered and kidnapped, and now let's go get the bastards. And we did that after 9/11. Let's go get the bastards. I admit that I was, in my young career, 3,000 Americans were killed. Buildings are in rubble. Let's go get the bastards. Bush with the bullhorn. I was swept up in patriotic fervor. I can tell you that all these years later, 20-some years later, I can tell you I look back at that and say, boy, we probably should have pumped the brakes and asked, do we need a Department of Homeland Security? Is that a good thing that we get naked before we get on a plane now all the time? I didn't, because that was unpatriotic back then. I used to say that all the time. What are you, some kind of peacenik weirdo? The country's been attacked, But I've learned my lesson. I'm a different man now,
I mean, look, we all learned a lot from that. I mean, well, some of us, I guess, some still haven't learned, but a lot of us learned a lot from that. Even people like Bernie Kerik, who was the NYPD commissioner in 9/11, and he very much pushed the Patriot Act in the early days and at its inception. And if you ask him now, which I have done on my show, do you still support it? Do you think it needs reform, or do you think it needs just done away with? And he says at this point, and being someone who pushed for it, I would say it just needs done away with, because we've learned that our own government cannot hold itself back from abusing these kind of powers. They've just proven themselves over and over again.
Yeah, what I don't do anymore, I guess the simplest way to say this, Emerald, is I no longer give the United States government the benefit of the doubt. That's the easiest way to say it. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. And I also thought, well, it is such a sad state of affairs, because people, a lot of people are going to Twitter and say, well, you've seen it. So why are you, you've seen these images. And it's like, yes, people say they have. I talk to a lot of people now who just, they're so weary of what their eyes are even showing them, because of all of the fake stuff, that is out there and used for propaganda. And I mean, that's a very worrisome state of affairs for our world, is when people don't know if they can even believe their eyes, and that's when it's starting to get scary.
Well, you can believe what Emerald Robinson shows you on The Absolute Truth with Emerald Robinson every day at 4 o'clock. I'm sure this has dominated your week like it's dominated mine. Anything in particular we need to watch for today?
It has. You know what? Because there, I think there's probably people that give better coverage to this too. I mean, we have definitely covered it, and we're going to cover it more today from a different angle in a way, because Michael Yon, war correspondent who now covers the southern border, but I mean, he spent years covering wars, and he's very familiar with the general that the U.S. has sent to Israel to aid them in strategy. He's going to come on and talk a little bit about his experience with this general and what we might expect and what this means. But also more with the southern border, because he does expect to start to see a flow of Palestinians across the border, because we did see Ukrainians come across the border with that conflict. And then, just the fact that there are thousands of people rushing the border every day, including confirmed terrorists, which, is extremely concerning at this time of now more conflict in the Middle East. But we're also covering other issues that are still important to our viewers. The
House fight
January
for sure.
6th, there was more, sentencing in January 6th, and a lot of this too, this is given the Biden administration cover, because everyone's so focused there, and they were in really big trouble. I mean, there's a lot going on.
Yes.
That is not good for the Biden administration. So honestly, this is giving them a little bit of rest, but we're going to keep covering those important topics as well.
Are you still, excuse me, is the safe money still on Jordan, or you're not there?
I still think the safe money is on Jordan. that's where I would put my bet. And look, we'll see. I'm a little bit surprised in some Republicans like John James. You would think that he would have backed Jordan, but he's not out of Michigan. I think a few more will get on board with Jordan today. Is it enough to get into 217 today? I don't know. But honestly, that's really he's the person who can garner the most support out of that Republican conference.
Yeah. Well, we'll watch it, and you'll watch it, and you'll report on it at The Absolute Truth. FrankSpeech.com, on Getter, Twitter, at Emerald Robinson, where she streams it there too. Don't miss her Substack, emerald.tv. We'll talk next week. Thank you, Emerald.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.